Oh boy, it's Beer Thunder. It's the P-47, the D-28. We're going kind of back to the roots. This is one of my good old standby planes. It was one of my favorites for Air RB, and now we're abusing the shit out of it in sim because it's very good, and I think it's one of those planes that is very rewarding to fly in sim, and it's not really it's not like one of these other planes where it's like, oh yes, it's a hard plane because it's fucking like impossible to fly. Like the Mosquito, I think, is one of those planes that's just like, it's fun because it's goofy, but it doesn't have any potential of being good. Whereas this thing is fun because it's good, but it's also fun because the guns are really consistent right now. And in the last little miniature update, last major update, Gaijin has somehow glitched 20mm cannons and above again to the point that they are a lot less effective than they were before. Like the last video I made with the Yak 3U with the Shavaks doing good damage, that is no longer the case. So when the game gets bad and things get a little bit frustrating, this is one of the planes to come back to. And the way that we're going to fly it is more or less strictly as a boom and zoomer, a boom and stall trap the other guy kind of thing. And this plane's very good at that. It's probably the best American 4.3, and I'd argue it's one of the best American planes all the way up until 5.0. Now, just because this plane is good doesn't mean that the Axis doesn't have anything that can counter this, because guess what? If you're fighting China, if you're fighting Italy, either of those have the exact same plane at an even lower battle rating range. The P-47 D-30s are at 3.7 instead of 4.3. So in fact, by playing this plane in the U.S. tech tree, you kind of get punished for the sake that it's American. Now, why the Axis/Chinese versions are lower than this thing, I don't really know. I think it just kind of comes down to the fact that there's not really a large player base in sim. There's not a lot of data, and Gaijin just puts things where they are, and they're going to more or less end up staying there for more or less the foreseeable future. And that, and most players that end up playing P-47s and most players that play sim in general are very transitory. What do I mean by that? I mean that, like, the player base in sim is not very large. I've been playing this game mode for around a year right now, and I see more or less the same people every day of the week. The consistent players never really change. There's always a couple of new names, but those new names never really stick around. And I think a large reason for that is sim is hard to learn, and the community itself, the way that most people end up interacting with the community, is maybe not the best, maybe not the healthiest, because within sim, there's kind of 2 or 3 different camps. You have kind of your new guard, Wingling Dragon, and like Crab Nation, the 2 guys that stream sim, and they're kind of like, I would characterize them as like the baby boomers that just want to grill, and that's a pretty large camp, and those guys are usually generally pretty positive, but they're not really. They're not able to call out really any of the kind of like bad aspects of their community without kind of getting some pushback from it. What do I mean by that? Basically, I want to say like 2 months ago, both of them put out like a little Discord announcement of like, hey guys, if you're curb stomping all of the noobs in the lobby, maybe don't do that because that is bad for player retention. And by and large, they have a point. They actually have a huge point, and this is like part of the problem with sim, is the better you get, the harder it is for everyone else to do well. And usually what happens in a lot of lobbies is your experienced players end up squatting together with each other, or they just kind of more or less coalesce around the same team, and then you end up with like this team matchup that's just like incredibly unbalanced. Like I have a couple of friends myself that play sim, and we could play together, but if we squad all of our consistent players together, if we squad and we actually like tried really hard, the lobby is going to be deleted. It is not going to be fun for the enemy team. part of like my earlier like sim arc is like me and a handful of beans. He's a dude who plays P-47 a lot as well. We squad up from time to time. We have really good teamwork. We have more than a few games where we both go like 15-1, and the enemy team just doesn't get to do anything because like we understand how the P-47 can be played, and we understand more or less like what the PvP style meta for War Thunder is. And the PvP style meta really is to fly with a wingman and fly with as many wingmen as you can. Because for all the dueling prowess that you have, for all the dogfighting prowess, for all the tactical and strategical brilliance, and the fact that you osmosized John Boyd's energy maneuverability theory by shoving it up your ass, really doesn't change the numbers game. I might be better at dogfighting in certain planes than someone like Idaho Bookworm, but that skill is completely irrelevant when I'm not fighting Idaho Bookworm. I'm fighting Idaho Bookworm. I'm fighting him and 3 other people. The same thing goes for like Greek Air Force. When Greek Air Force is squatted up, you have to change the way that you play. And for players that are just learning, a lot of these lobbies are them just being farmed for kills, and that's kind of what's going to happen in this lobby. But the only difference being is that I'm solo. I'm flying by myself, and at this point, I'm like six T-Rex teas in. It's like this fucking brand of tea it's like black tea with vodka in it. It was an interesting experience. I don't know if I would repeat it, but I thought it was funny. I was like, haha, T-Rex, and I was like, realized that's also like name of some other War Thunder streamer person thing. But we're just flying around the P-47, and we're just kind of fragging everything, and we get a couple of reasonably decent fights. We get this 190 that comes in here, and he tries to keep up, and he's learning. He's not like, I'm not like, oh wow, look at this guy, he's trash, he fucking sucks. Look how fucking great I am. Like, just look how immaculately excellent my fucking gunnery is in the P-47. Like, no, my channel's not supposed to be a focus on, wow, look how skilled I am. And that's kind of brings me to a second point of, we talked about Wing-a-Ling. It's kind of like the boomer generation that just wants to vibe, and they're they make a pretty decent bulk of the sim community. But the other part of it is you also have kind of like your old guard, you guys have been playing for like 10 years of sim, that their interaction with other people is actually really funny. I kind of left some of the sim discourse because I could not handle all of the LARPing all of the time. Like people will unironically, like, that have been playing the game for like 10 years will compare themselves to Eric Hartman and be like, post things like, the weak should fear the strong, and like, and for them, like, their satisfaction is doing basically exactly what I'm doing, is using my more experience to just kind of come in and wipe the lobby out. And like, this was a problem. This is kind of like congregates around, I'm not going to say it congregates around WoW specifically, but this is a trend that is more prevalent, I think, in your more long-term players that have been around, because they kind of have mentally set sim aside as like this roost that they're supposed to roll. Like, this is supposed to be like their kind of like exclusive club that really nobody from the outside is supposed to join and spoil their fun or spoil their sense of like being like the killer elite. And it's like, well, from my point of view of a guy who kind of learned everything in the last year, I did not think that sim was all that hard to pick up. And there are a lot of shortcuts that you can take. There are a lot of things that the existing community just isn't very proficient at, or just doesn't understand it by and large. For instance, dogfighting is something that, for whatever reason, most sim players, even if they've been playing for a very long time, are still kind of novices at it. And I say that, but when it comes to dueling, I would not rate myself as some kind of professional by any means, but I do practice against like a lot of people that are a good bit better than me, and I have learned a lot about how to control the plane from basically doing that. It really forces me to think about trajectories and think about openings and focus on making good attacks. It means that I had a much easier time just adapting the way that I played Air RB into how to play Air SB. And I think any of the good War Thunder YouTubers that play Air RB would not have any problem picking up this game mode. You are not part of some special elite club because of the control scheme that you use. You are not somehow better informed. In fact, a lot of the sim community has kind of like educated themselves into ignorance. Like there are more than enough people that completely eschew any kind of dogfighting techniques or any kind of dogfight whatsoever, just because they have mentally staked their claim into being a pure boom and zoom player or playing in like one very specific way. And usually these players always kind of justify it based on like, well, my KD is very high. And it's like, well, your fucking KD in sim like doesn't matter. Really what matters at the end of the day is kind of like the enjoyment of the game mode. And for a lot of players in sim, the only enjoyment comes from killing other players and not being killed by them. And this kind of creates the cycle of the cycle of lobby shopping, the cycle of, oh, I got killed too many times by a certain player, I am going to go and I'm going to find another game. And this creates an environment where more or less everyone has been segregated into winning and losing sides. And it means that the people that are on the losing side will continue to lose harder the longer they stay in a particular game. And like this is like actually really noticeable like when Crab streams, because there's a couple of people in Crab's kind of group of friends that always squad together and they always do pretty well, and they do pretty well against the average Crabs Nation viewer. And when they're all together, there isn't a lot of counterplay if you're new to the game. And so it means that if you're one of these guys who just wants to vibe with Wingaling or Crab, it means that a lot of the time if you have a 50% chance of really just being farmed for kills. And that is not a fun environment to try to learn in. It's not fun to join a game being barely able to control your plane and have 4 dudes in like the best metamobile for whatever the battle rating of the day is, or the battle rating shows, and latch themselves directly to your 6 when you think that you have an advantage. Like, and Crabs and Wing called out these people, but he didn't really call them out by name, and because at the end of the day, nobody can really dictate how people that are better should play the game. Like, I can't tell you that you guys should stop playing with your friends. You guys need to make this more fair, because there is some value in kind of trial by fire, but there has to be like some pushback too. There has to be a balance to it. Like, a lot of the reason that I don't play with Beans all of the time, or the reason that I don't play with me, Beans, Butters, and Raymond, and all of the other people that I could stuff into like a single team, is because it's not fun for me to play in a way that's not competitive for other people. Like, I try to play in a way that like I have a potential of being killed. I am not going to take my P-47 to 9 kilometers for the whole entire game just to preserve my like 10-to-1 notional KD ratio. Like this guy here, he's got the def and diff decal, and he popped up behind me. He shot me a little bit, and I got the good damage RNG, and I'm just gonna dogfight him. Now, he's a 109 F4, and the right way to do this, the doctrinal way to engage him, is to just point the nose down and run away, get my separation, climb over my airfield, and then come back and stick purely to boom and zoom. But for me, that's not fun. For him, he can learn something here. He can be like, oh wow, the P-47 turn is a little bit better than I thought it did. And I get the kill. I get like a little satisfying kind of dogfight out of it, and I have put myself in a vulnerable position. I don't have me and my 4 best friends to come back me up, so if he has a friend in this position, I could have died. But I get lucky, and this is a lobby that started out as being the most populated one at the time. Like, it was not completely full. Full sim lobbies are pretty hard to find. There's usually 1 to 2 of them that are near the limit, but for the most part, I think this one started out pretty full. But as time has gone on, as I have racked up some kills, as I've boomed and zoomed my way to, I want to say that this is going to be the 12th kill in a single flyout. What has happened is all of the players that I am fighting have more or less begun to quit. And we're going to get to a point in this game where the enemy team is going to dwindle down to basically one player, because people do not like dying in War Thunder. It is a frustrating experience. And the two easiest ways to circumvent that problem are to quit the game or basically squad together with friends. Now, if the War Thunder sim community was bigger and there were more lobbies and it wasn't just the same like 50 to 60 people every single day, team play would be a lot more fun. Team play would be a lot more interesting. But the situation that I'm seeing right now is we have more or less 3 to 4 different super squads that kind of just roam around, and they're farming kills more or less the same way I'm doing in this game. Is like the experience gap between me and the enemy team cannot be surmounted. That is not going to happen unless I run into a player of like similar experience and has like a plane that is similarly suited to meta play like mine is. Even then, experienced players do succumb to kind of the same match pressure that newer players do, and the fact that they also don't like dying and they don't like being put into fights that they don't think are fair. So you end up with a lot of situations where you have a very experienced player on the enemy team and you kill them 1 or 2 times and they're going to leave the game and they're going to find another lobby that is basically where they can be, in my point of view, going around farming kills in their metamobile of choice, and I am going to be free to kind of just punish everyone else that remains in this lobby free of charge. Now, there are some people that are kind of built differently, that are built the opposite of that do seek out other experienced players in order to fight them. Idaho's actually one of these dudes. Like, Idaho by himself is incredibly based. Ada Wolf, not really based. Not gonna give the racist Turkish guy the based moniker, but that dude, he brings the fucking fight. He brings it to you. Now, the way he plays the P-51 is fucking cheesy as fuck, though. I will go on an aside to that because it's literally just fucking 6th Army gameplay tactics, but in sim of I'm gonna go to 9 fucking kilometers, try to boom and zoom you, and if you reverse me, I am running straight to the nearest source of AA, and I'm going to circle there until I can gain an advantage again. That is the way that he plays the P-51, and I have issues with that, but all in all, like, at least that guy brings the fight. So I'm not gonna, like, on one hand, fuck him. On the other hand, whatever. It's fun. He's probably part of the community that he's directing his toxicity against toxic people like me who are farming noobs. So overall, he is doing like a community service, even if he is just kind of like a weird racist Turkish guy. The same can be said with his like little feud that he has with Wovi. I'm there for it. It's incredibly based. It's incredibly funny, and directing those two groups of people at each other is like probably the most entertaining part of the whole entire fucking sim community, to be honest, because it's literally just the fucking Spider-Man meme in fucking simulator form. Anyways, the side tangent over. So what's going to be the long-term solution to all of this? Like, what would be a better way to make sim more enjoyable? Now, one of the things that was suggested is, hey, all you good players need to handicap yourself into non-meta planes or play the objective, take out a bomber or something. Like, I'm not taking out a bomber. I don't even have them crewed. They're never in any of the slots that I have. I don't find flying around and dropping bombs on target from third-person view. I don't find that to be very entertaining. So I'm not going to advocate specifically for that. But I think the best solution is probably just to bring the average skill level of the sim community up a little bit higher than it currently is. And I think what I'm going to start doing is I'm not going to start my own version of like the Air Force Academy. I'm not going to start my own like War Thunder Academy of being fucking the goatist and turn it into like a weird psycho cult. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my Discord, let more people join it, because I do have a good variety of players that like to play together, and I do have like a good variety of players that like to practice dogfighting, and there's a lot that people that are newer at the game could learn from them, that they could learn from that experience, because in reality, if you can learn how to control the plane in an environment that isn't you just getting farmed by the super squad, that gives you a leg up when it comes time to try to fight against the super squad. And it gives you like a group of people to play with that they also have the capability of forming their own super squad to go take out the super duper squad. And I think that's probably overall gonna be the best solution. So fuck it, join my Discord, whatever. Look at all these kills. I'm the greatest, etc., etc. Like and subscribe.